Everything I've done is a build, is something that I've built one thing on top of the other. And the next thing I do is informed by all of those other things. I love being able to feel like my life is a continuum, that things that may have felt like they might have been missteps was not at all a misstep.
Hey guys, this is AniMat, and this time around, I'm actually going to be doing an interview. And who I have right over here is actually a director who's doing something that, honestly, I feel like is making a really awesome project. Please welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Marq Evans. Marq, how are you doing?
Hello. Good, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. So, for the people at home, they might not be familiar with who you are. And I'll just say right now that Marq Evans, currently, he's actually doing a documentary based on the life of Will Vinton called Welcome to My Daydream, The Story of Will Vinton. But in order for audiences to get familiar with you, could you describe who you are as a documentarian and your experience in making documentaries?
Sure, yeah, so I'm a independent documentary filmmaker. The last film that I made is called The Glamour and the Squalor. It's about a radio DJ named Marco Collins that was instrumental in breaking, most notably grunge music that came out of Seattle in the early 1990s. And then he went on to break some other acts as well too. So it's a story of his kind of rise and fall, and somebody that was really instrumental in the music industry that maybe people hadn't heard of. And as I was finishing up that project, I was looking for what my next film might be, and I came across a story about Will and the studio. It was the Matt, you've probably seen it. It was on Priceonomics, how the father of claymation lost his company, and it was just a really well-written and entertaining article. And I grew up with Will's characters, and still watch the Christmas special now with my son, and watched that when I was growing up. So it really. I don't know if I really knew that Will was the person behind a lot of these characters that I grew up with. I remember the name and I was a fan, but I honestly, I hadn't really thought about that for quite a while. And when I read that article, I thought this is a really interesting story, and the nostalgia of those characters brought me back. So that was actually about 2 years ago now, and I reached out to Will kind of on a cold call via email, and he wrote back saying, yeah, we can meet up, but I'm probably not interested in making a film, and but we can meet up for coffee. So we went out and got coffee in Portland, and had a great meeting, totally hit it off, really, really good guy. And I thought, he's in, it's a done deal. And then I talked to him the next day, and he thought, yeah, it was really good. He said, really good meeting you, but probably don't want to do a movie. So, but we can stay in touch. And then we stayed in touch for like the next 6 months. And ultimately, I think I earned his trust, and he realized maybe it's not a bad idea to have this film done and pay tribute to, I think as far as Will's concerned, it's not as much about him, but it's also about all of the work that they created and the people that were part of that studio, and being able to give them something to look back on and a history of that story.
All right. It's interesting that you mentioned that with the previous documentary that you made, it was a rise and fall story of someone in the entertainment industry. And here you are again doing another documentary on someone in the entertainment industry who has a bit of a rise and fall story.
Right.
Does that lifestyle interest you, or that kind of story really does pique your interest? Because I noticed that there was a little bit of a pattern.
Yeah, there's for sure some similarities, and I don't know. I mean, it must. I was attracted to both of those subjects and those stories, so there must be something there. I don't think I'm necessarily looking for that in a topic or a subject, but the story of my last film, I think it was an article that I read on him too. So for whatever reason, maybe the written article of the rise and fall interests me in a way that gets my mind wandering and thinks that maybe there could be a movie there. And the thing with Will's story too is it has this sad. The end of Will's story is not what happened with Will Vinton Studios. That's the end of the Will Vinton Studio part of the story. But really, Will's story, I think, is inspiring. He started the company out of his basement and turned that into a $40 million a year creative organization and employed hundreds of people, a lot of them that went on to form their own studios and created all these characters. So really, he is a success story, but there is that cautionary tale, and there is that fall.
Even doing some research of my own on Will Vinton, I noticed that there really was a bit of this cautionary tale, like you said, because he ended up getting his company so big, but then once the setbacks came in, it was really difficult for him to go and pick back up.
Yeah, I think the fall was just so far. It was such a big fall because they were rolling the dice and trying to really be a major player. I mean, they had this niche. They were in Portland, and that's really a lot of what made them great was they were in Portland, that they weren't this LA or New York company. And they had a lot of success kind of being this small player and ultimately ended up getting really big. But I think once a lot of those they brought in a lot of outside people, brought in a lot of LA type people that thought, here's the way you've got to do this. Here's the way that you can go from where you're at now to the next level. And Will, he had this idea of kind of being the next Walt Disney, whether that was something that was always his mission, or the way that he puts it is kind of like, well, if the shoe fits, he has all these people in his ear saying, you're on a path of Walt Disney, and now you need to do a theme park, and you need to do these big movies. And so you start hearing those things, and you kind of start believing, oh, this is what I need to do. And not everybody's always looking out for you. And ultimately, that's what ended up happening to him. And he just lost control. It got too big and out of his control. And then, the fall was pretty deep.
Yeah, ironically enough, is that I think he just wasn't big enough so that he could afford to fail, in a sense. Now, I guess you really did answer the next question I had, that you pretty much answered why is it that you chose Will Vinton to be your next subject. But there is one thing that really did pique my interest in your documentary, is the fact that in the demo trailer that you presented, you showed a lot of people that were being interviewed, and as an animation lover myself, there were a lot of people that I recognized immediately. So, for the audience, could you explain who are some of the people that you've interviewed for this movie?
Yeah, and that's been one of my favorite parts of this film. And I think it is, all the work that I've done. My last film interviewing rock stars from, Pearl Jam and bands like that. And then this film interviewing some of just these really creative geniuses like Craig Bartlett, for instance, who got his started his career at Will Vinton Studios working on the California Raisins. And then they kind of said he was the Noid. Like, really, Craig was the main guy that was working on the Noid. And ultimately, he left to direct and spent time on the Rugrats, I believe, and then founded his own company and got Hey Arnold off the ground. So he created Hey Arnold, and then since then he created Dinosaur Train, and then I think his newest show is Ready, Jet, Go. So interviewed him, and he was just a great interview and super fun to be around. Peter Lord, obviously from Aardman, he was a fantastic interview and really had a great time with him. I interviewed him the night after the Oscars when they were up against Inside Out. I live in San Diego. I live in San Diego, California, and he, he's in the UK and flew over to LA for the award ceremony. So he said he was up to like 4 a.m., I think, and then I interviewed him at like 8 in the morning. But he was fantastic and a lot of fun and had a lot of great stories to share about Will, because the Aardman and Will Vinton Studios were really on like these parallel paths, unbeknownst to each other. This was in like the 70s and 80s before the internet, so they didn't really know that there was anybody else doing what they were doing, and they were doing it kind of on the same level. And then ultimately, when they did find out about each other at like festivals and things like that, they became good friends and they would share animators and things like that. But it's interesting because Aardman, I think today, is what Will always wanted Will Vinton Studios to be, and Leica obviously has carried on that tradition and is making the films, which is what Will wanted to do. But unfortunately, he wasn't around to be part of it.
Yeah, definitely. But I do find it so interesting that you do bring up Peter Lord of Aardman, considering that at the time, it was only Will Vinton that really was the master of Western stop motion. There wasn't really any other person that was standing up to the ranks, or really just, anybody in the Americas that really used stop motion as their craft and made a big name out of themselves. So really, like in the Americas, it was all about claymation, but in Europe and in the UK, it was all about Aardman, interestingly enough.
Well, and I think the thing was, Will was able to put deals together. He still is, but he was a very good producer and deal maker. And somebody else that I interviewed was Bill Plympton. And Bill is known as like, the king of independent animation. And he talked, and he's had an amazing career, of course, and won all kinds of awards and does very well for himself. But he talked about, especially on, he was really jealous of Will. Bill's actually from Portland originally as well too, and then moved out to New York. But he was jealous of Will and the jobs that he was able to get and the budgets, and because that just wasn't a skill set at the time of Bill's. But Will was just always very confident and can put these deals together. So yeah, there's other people that have done clay that did, clay way before Will did, but there's a reason he's known as the father of claymation. One, he coined the term and trademarked claymation, but two, really it's because he brought it to the masses in the United States when, he brought it to commercials that everybody would see, and then mainstream television for the shows, the Meet the Raisins shows and things like that, and the Christmas special.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, this one I want to know regarding you yourself. So it's going to be a little bit of a personal question. Which one is it that you find to be your favorite of Will Vinton's works, or what is your fondest memory involving Will Vinton's works?
I'd say that the fondest memory would be the Claymation Christmas celebration, because that was something that we watched every year. And then I got away from it for a long time, but I have a 7-year-old son, and we've started watching it the last couple of years. And so that brings back a lot of memories, and it's been fun to share again with somebody, and just, he gets so excited about it. But seeing some of the moments, like in the choir where the character gets hit in the head and is driving the conductor crazy, like that, it took me right back to my childhood. So I'd say that. And, of course, I was fond of the Raisins at the time and loved seeing the Noid on the TV. But as far as like what brings the most nostalgia, it would definitely be the Christmas celebration.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I would definitely say it's more the commercials, because when you think back of the 90s, the claymation style that Will Vinton offered really was iconic, and when you see it, you know who it's from. So I guess for me, I would say, I didn't really get into the claymation specials per se. I haven't seen them as a kid, but I have definitely seen a lot of the commercials, and that's how I really do remember Will Vinton. That, and also seeing the commercials of the TV shows that were on at the time, like the PJs.
And it's interesting that the commercials had all this success, and you think of you remember the Raisins, but they started as commercials. I mean, that's a rare thing that you can have that you can be so effective with your character design and development that you have characters from a commercial that end up creating this phenomenon around. Most of North America was into them. So you grew up in Montreal and you saw them there. Yeah.
Of course.
So yeah, it's definitely an interesting thing. Like, I don't know if that would happen today.
Yeah, I mean, nowadays it is a little bit of the norm that you see popular characters coming from commercials, kind of like the Geico Gecko. But really, when you think about it, the California Raisins were really the ones that were one of the first to really establish themselves as characters, and people remember more the characters than the actual products that they were selling.
Right, yeah, totally. And that's, and I know that it did sell a lot of raisins, but it sold a lot of California Raisins merchandise.
Oh,
that's for
absolutely. Sure. Now, one thing that I really want to ask, and I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, is actually regarding Will Vinton himself, since recently you have seen him from time to time. How has Will Vinton been these days? Like, do you have any updates on how he's treating himself in his life? Like, what is Will Vinton doing nowadays?
Yeah, Will's doing well, and first of all, he's just a really fun guy to be around. He's super down to earth. He's a normal guy, and I like being around him. It's always fun to pick his brain and talk animation or filmmaking or entrepreneurship or just anything creative. And he's working on projects. I mean, I think you'll see something out of Will still. He's attached to direct a few different animated films, one from India and one from China, that is as soon as all that funding comes together, I think that they'll go through. He's been writing a lot, but the thing that he's putting most of his time and energy into is a live action, like a play, like a musical that he wants to take to Broadway, which is super ambitious. He's about to turn 70 years old in a few weeks, but that is the one thing, more than anything, that is getting him jumping out of bed. It's combining a lot of the things from his career, character development, special effects, and things like that. But also he's a musician as well too. Will's been a drummer his whole life, so he's really he's been writing this music with David Pomeranz, who's a Oscar or a Grammy Award winner, and so they've been collaborating on the project, and he's been working on that for a few years now. So of course, selfishly for me, I'd love to see that come to fruition. It could be a fun end of the film, but also, for him, it would be really cool to see him have something, another big success for his career.
Oh, absolutely. And you mentioned that he is currently working on some animated films. Are they going to be in claymation, or is he going to be using another animation medium like hand-drawn or not stop motion?
Yeah, I think
CGI?
I think these would be CGI.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Recently, I saw that you actually did open up a Kickstarter campaign. And from the looks of the trailer, it looked like you already have done. You already got a lot done. So I just want to know, why is it that you opened up a Kickstarter campaign for the documentary?
Yeah. So up to this point, everything has essentially been self-funded. It's one of those passion projects, doing it after hours and on the weekends and things like that. And really, I kind of made the decision that in order to finish this film in some sort of timely manner, there needs to be an injection of some funds. So we started this Kickstarter campaign. The goal of the campaign, fingers crossed that it gets completely funded, would be to start working on the rough cut of the film. There's still more interviews that we want to do, actually a handful of pretty great interviews that I would like, that have committed, but we just haven't had the funds to travel and put a little crew together to shoot them. So there'll be some more interviews, getting a rough cut done of the film, and then hopefully enough to also do pre-production for, and like storyboard out, work on some of these original characters that we're creating for the film. So we've got these two original claymation style characters we're developing that live inside of Will's head, and they're going to be his left brain and his right brain. And we'll voice, they'll have dialogue, and we'll cast them. So they'll, hopefully we'll get some decent names to voice these characters. So just getting those developed. We're working right now with Tony Merrithew, who was one of the key designers of the Raisins and the Noid, and he's still on top of his game. And actually, we're using hands from the Raisins and eyes from the Noid to build these brains. So that's been a really fun process. So that's what we're hoping for, is that with this campaign to be able to use the funds for the rest of the interviews, edit the rough cut of the film, and then develop and design these characters and storyboard them, and then hopefully just go from there.
All right, that's good. So now that you describe why it's great for you to have the Kickstarter, but for the audience's perspective, why should they go and fund your Kickstarter? Like, what would they get from funding your Kickstarter? Yeah,
there's some really, I'm pretty excited about the rewards that we're offering. I think the most common, I'm actually looking at it right now, the most common pledge that we've gotten so far is at the $25 level. And the incentive there is you'll be the first to own the film. So once the film, we'll finish the film, and it'll likely do a film festival run, and whatever sort of distribution it ends up getting, we'll be able to offer the film with a downloadable link before it's actually available to the public. This is something that we did with my last film, and it was really cool to be able to do that a couple weeks early before anybody else gets to see it. So that, as I'm looking right now, is the most common pledge. There's also a $5 pledge where we'll give you a thanks in the credits, and that's one of those things where I like to go on to Kickstarter and Indiegogo and give a $5 or $10 because it does help, but also it's kind of cool just to know that you're helping complete a project. Mm-hmm. So we'll put your name in the credits for that, and then some of the other common ones for $50, the digital download and the official poster. We also have a Welcome to My Daydream t-shirt. We have a mustache wax that's branded with our Welcome to My Daydream logo on there, which has a clay mustache on there. All kinds of pictures of Will and his character signed by Will. Actually, multiple different things that are signed by Will. And then at the higher level, it's a little bit. I was hoping to make this one a little bit less expensive, but we just have hard costs that go into it. As we'll create a claymation style version of you or whoever you want us to make one of, and actually we'd even put it in the movie as well too. So those start at $500, and then for an extra $250 we'll put it into the film and animate it into a little sequence. So that's one. It's pretty cool. All the way up to there was somebody actually that a couple days ago just pledged and came on as an associate producer. So yeah, all kinds of things, but I think really like I said, the most popular so far has been just the opportunity to own the film, be a part of the process of making it by contributing and then owning it before anybody else.
All right, that sounds good. Now, I do have one more question, and this is going to be the biggest one regarding this documentary. I'm sure like after listening to this, everybody should probably be excited about this documentary and what's going to be coming up. But the big question remains, when is it going to be coming out?
Yeah, good question. And part of that does, the funding speeds things up. Because like I said, when we don't have the cash flow, then really the team is mostly me sitting in my garage when I can. And, we all have passion projects that we work on. And so this is where I spend my time. But when we have the resources, I can put the crew together and we can just move a lot faster. So the goal, I'm hoping, if we get this going, it'll still be about a year out before we, I think, finish the film. So we'd be looking at probably early 2019 festivals and hopefully sometime, mid 2019 release.
Okay, so early to mid 2019 is what you're expecting.
I think so, yeah.
All right, that sounds good. Well, let me just say thank you so much, Marq, for this interview. This really does sound awesome. And hopefully you guys would be interested in checking out the Kickstarter campaign. And actually, speaking of which, if you really are interested right now in actually supporting the Kickstarter campaign because of this interview right over here, you can actually go and check out a link. And there is actually a nice little bonus for you guys if you do support Welcome to My Daydream through Kickstarter through this interview right over here. Marq, can you explain a little bit more about this?
Yeah, so we worked together to create a little incentive or just special giveaway for your audience, which would be anybody that pledges at the $25 level or more is eligible to win an original cell from the California Raisins show. So the California Raisins show was something, it was aired for 1 year, and it was not claymation style. It was 2D, cell animated, and Will was nice enough to gift a handful of these, and so I'd love to offer one to your audience. So if people back at the $25 level, message us, I guess, after the pledge and say, hey, I saw it on AniMat, and we'll enter you in, and we'll just pick we'll pick a winner out of the people that pledge at that amount, and you'll get that thrown into your original prize. So if you're at the $25 level, you'll get the film, you'll get the thanks, and then you'll be in the running for the original cell as well.
I mean, it definitely sounds great because no matter what, even if you don't win the contest, you're still going to end up with something because you're still pledging for this.
Right.
So yeah, with all that said though, thank you so much, Marq, for this interview, and hope you guys keep an eye out for Welcome to My Daydream. Hopefully will come out sometime in 2019.
That's it. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Matt.
All right, see you later, dudes.